the bugs need to work when they're, or the builds need to work when they're delivered. You can't waste half your time in what one of our clients euphemistically referred to as environmental shakeout, which is basically retroactive unit and integration testing to try to stabilize the system. You need to make sure that you identify and eliminate bug clusters, and you need to make sure that the turnaround time, the closure period for a bug is short, measured in days, not weeks or months. And people are going to expect that you find all the bugs, or that you find the most important bugs, but they don't create any of the preconditions, then you'll fail. And being as testing as a service organization, if you fail, then that is going to be very dangerous to you. Not in some cases immediately, or in other cases, as the anecdote that I just gave you illustrates, in the longer run. Okay, so hopefully you listen to this whole presentation and now you're going, whew, oh good, I'm not doing any of those dumb things. And maybe you listen to this presentation and said, ooh, I'm doing a few of those dumb things. Okay, yeah, now you're in a position to undumb yourself, undumb those things. Now, there are other dumb things that you might be doing. Yes, there can be. This is not by any means an exhaustive list. So what can you do? Well, you benchmark yourself internally against the stakeholder expectations, as I said, and also benchmark yourself externally against best practices and develop a plan for improvement. Now, let's look at this a little bit. How would you benchmark yourself externally? Well, there are a number of ways to assess your testing situation and identify what you're doing well and what you're doing poorly. There are frameworks for this. There are basically, the frameworks fall into two models, or two camps. So the prescriptive models, like testing maturity model or test process improvement, and then there are the non-prescriptive models, like critical testing processes, which is my framework, or software testing and evaluation process. Now, the difference is that a prescriptive model puts a maturity rating on your testing, and the processes are improved in the order in which they appear in the maturity model. And you might say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, the problem with that, I think, is that it does not connect improvement and change to pain, to real organizational pain. And as I was saying before, I believe, from my experience, that pain is what motivates people to make changes more than just some sort of idealized situation. Saying, oh, we're going to move towards industry best practices by achieving TMMI level 5. I don't find that very inspiring, and I don't think my clients do. But if you say, we have identified an opportunity to save an extra $500,000 a year by raising our defect detection effectiveness to from 90% to 95%, this is a compelling argument. This is the kind of argument that can inspire some amount of investment. So, I think you need to connect to what's actually important and what your stakeholders perceive as pain and where there is inefficiency and ineffectiveness, and use that as a way to motivate people to solve problems. And that's going to happen in the non-prescriptive models, because that's what they're focused on, is identifying pain points and putting solutions in place for them. Now, in terms of how you do an assessment, basically you could hire a consultant like me or any other organization that does this. There are a fair number of them out there. Obviously, I think we're the best, but you have many options. Or you can self-assess. There are books on all of these models that are out there, and you could read the books and read the literature on the various websites and so forth, and you could do a self-assessment. And either one of those paths might position you to make the kind of improvements that you need. Now, we've found that some of our clients have liked the fact that having an independent consultant come in from the outside makes the findings seem a little less self-serving. And certainly if you expect that the results would be that you're doing a very good job and you want confirmation of that, it's going to be perhaps received too much as patting yourself on the back if you do a self-assessment and you come up smelling like a rose. Now, however you do your assessment, self-assess or external assessment, prescriptive or non-prescriptive, I'm going to encourage you to use data. Okay, use data in your assessment. here's a classic historical example. Back, 2,500 years ago or so, Aristotle, smart Greek guy, said heavier things fall faster than lighter things. See the rock, see the feather, and the feather falls slower. Okay. So heavier objects fall faster than lighter ones. That's what he said, and people believed it for a couple thousand years. And it wasn't until Galileo, back 500 years ago or so, climbed up Tower of Pisa with two different weight cannonballs and dropped them. And it wasn't thud, thud. It was thud. Both hit the ground at the same time. Now, Aristotle, believed to be right in this point of heavier objects falling faster for a couple thousand years, a trivial experiment. Now you might say, well, they didn't have the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Greece. Well, yeah, they didn't have the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but have you ever seen Greece? I mean, it's just, there are like cliffs all over the place, and mountains, and overhangs, or looking over the water. Anybody could have gotten two different weight rocks and gone up to the edge of a cliff and dropped them into the water and come back and go, hey, dude, Aristotle, man, I get some bad news for you. We didn't go splash, splash. It went splash. They both landed at the same time. And then Aristotle would go, oh, well, I guess I'm wrong about that. Now, what does a dead philosopher have to do with anything? Well, this is actually a very common problem, and we see this a lot with assessments. What people think is the problem is often not the problem. The data does not back up what people's impressions are. And what people think the solution is often not the solution. Now, there can be any number of reasons for this, but one of the reasons is that people have agendas, and agendas blind them to the real situation. They have things they want to see happen. They become, having expressed an opinion, married to that opinion and reluctant to see that opinion disproved. And so, if you're going to do an assessment, by all means, before you come out with a series of recommendations, do what we always do in our assessments. Gather and analyze metrics and find the real pain points and the real possible solutions, rather than just listening to people ramble on in an interview about, well, this is wrong and we need to do this about it, because we have very frequently in assessments had situations where people said things that sounded extremely reasonable. They were wrong. Okay, so at the end of this whole process, you understand the pain points, you understand potential solutions. What do? Well, put a plan in place to implement solutions. Make sure, as I said, measure your improvements. Have your KPIs, your key process indicators that are telling you whether the process is improving and whether you're hitting your targets. Make sure you communicate the improvements and explain the benefits as you improve. Market your test team. Sell your test team. And finally, of course, avoid falling back into dumb behaviors. It's really easy to implement temporary improvements, then after a while people get lackadaisical and then start backsliding. So you should see what you do on a day-to-day basis as tactical. And you should see also a strategic set of benefits that you offer to the organization. And you should make sure to align those things, that you behave tactically in a way that maximizes your overall strategic benefits. And this is ultimately, you go from the 10 worst things to the one best thing. If you have a well-aligned mission, strategy, and tactics, then your test team is positioned for success. Okay, so that concludes the presentation. At this point, I'll take some questions from the audience. Any questions that you might have, you can submit using the webinar question feature. I'll leave the advertisement up here. I'm going to do that. Let's see. We have one question. What is the call-in number again? I can't dial in the number. And that's regrettable. So the person asking the question had left. When you get your invite and you register, you should be given a Outlook invite, by the way, and that should have that number in it. But I would encourage you to write that down just in case, because certainly that's that's you know, a potential problem if you don't have the call-in number. Let's see. Question here. Somebody having a question about on fail to fire someone who needs firing, but it doesn't say what the question is. So hopefully they'll ask it again. Okay. Now, a question from Rich. Applying the 10 items to the Scrum framework, how do these dumb things apply, or is V-model, waterfall, XP, etc. irrelevant to this conversation? I would say that it's possible to be a smart, effective, efficient tester or test team in any life cycle, and it's possible to be a dumb, ineffective, inefficient tester or test team in any life cycle. Obviously, we have to adapt ourselves to the life cycle, and that's part of being smart. And I think that ties into this understanding of what the stakeholders need and expect from us. And certainly one of the things they would need and expect is the ability to synchronize ourselves with the life cycle. But I think if you look at most of the things that I talked about, they actually are completely life cycle independent, you know, and really apply anywhere. A question from Arib. First time using the Citrix app for a webinar. Is there any way I can get or save the slides for this presentation? So the slides themselves, as I mentioned, are on the website, www.rbcs-us.com. They're in the basic library. Feel free to download them. I would appreciate it if you want other people to take a look at them, that you forward the link rather than forwarding the downloaded PDF. And the reason I say that is because I want to make sure that people understand that these are copyrighted intellectual properties and that they're posted there for people to use, but they're not posted there for people to distribute or to give their own presentations on or incorporate into their own material and so forth. So, but certainly feel free to forward the link to anyone that you think might be interested. And come July, next month, this webinar and the previous two webinars will be available in recorded format on our website, so you'll be able to actually listen to the presentation. And again, the same thing would apply there, that you could feel free to forward that link on to anybody in your organization who might be interested. And then finally, as I've mentioned on the website, if you want this webinar or any other webinar on any test-related topic presented in-house for your test team or for other people in your organization, feel free to contact us, and we'll be happy to arrange that for you guys. A question from Summit. Have you ever been in a scenario where there was so much process that it slowed down or hindered testing to a point where testers were not able to find all bugs? Well, I'm going to assume, Summit, that you mean not able to find the bugs they should, and the most important bugs. I mean, you'll never be able to find all bugs, but to your main thrust of your question of too much process, I've seen that. Now this has an intersection with the question that Rich asked earlier about life cycles, because it gets into a bigger question of the overall environment, world in which the testing has to live and operate. And you know, certain environments, like if you're in a regulated environment, FDA regulations, for example, safety critical systems of various kinds, there is the need to create auditable documentation that things happened. And for our clients that are in that kind of world, we do see a fair amount of process, but it is not unnecessary process. It's necessary because of the world in which they live. And I think this is sort of the criterion that needs to be applied here when you're looking at process. You need to have enough process to satisfy whatever requirements there are to get the job done. And certainly if you're in an environment where there's a lot of, say, employee turnover or something like that, then there can be a need for more process because you have to you know, write down things that might otherwise be obvious. Also, in large organizations, there's some value in having more process in place so that you can ensure consistency of test teams across the organization, which allows for comparability of KPIs, success metrics, across different groups, and also allows groups to share best practices because they do things in similar ways. But certainly, yes, so to your point, it is indeed possible for there to be too much process or process for process's own sake. You know, I think this is, I didn't include this on my 10 worst thing because I don't think that I see it as often as I see the others, but I suppose if I were to do a top 20, it might very well figure in that list. Is there any questionnaire to assess your situation, Omar asks. Yes, absolutely. So as I said, there are a number of frameworks out there, and I think if you say, well, what are the top frameworks, I think, you know, critical testing processes, which is in my book of the same name, systematic test and evaluation process, which is or software test and evaluation process, which is the book Systematic Software Testing. There's TMM and TMMI, which is described in Practical Software Testing, I think it's called, Bernstein's book, and then there's Test Process Improvement, or TPI, which is described in Martin Pohl's book. Obviously, I'm somewhat partial to my own critical testing processes. I think if you pick up a copy of that book and you work your way through it, you'll see that it is structured to allow you to look at a number of elements, processes, and determine how you're doing. Can you give a real-life example of a pain that you use these practices on? This is a question from Kirby. Yeah, absolutely. So we had a client, and the client would still have the client. This client, when we did the assessment, they spent anywhere from a quarter to a third of the test execution period on what they refer to, and I mentioned this before, as environmental shakeout. And this was a euphemism, because basically what happened is that the system to be tested would come to them in such horrible shape that you just couldn't do anything with it. And so they get new builds, and then it turned out the environment wasn't set up right, and then it would turn out that the test data wasn't loaded right. All this stuff that could have been done prior to the start of system test execution. And when we got there, they were just sort of blasé about it. Everybody was. It was like, oh, you know, this is the way things go. It was like in the, you know, Middle Ages when a quarter to a third of children didn't live to be adults. It's like, oh yeah, infant mortality happens. You know, well, no, it doesn't have to. And so what we did was we quantified the damage that was being done by that in terms of delay of release and also in terms of just inefficiency. What percentage of the test team's time was being squandered, and how many dollars did this cost? And as a result of that assessment, this motivated them to do a number of things, one of which was a complete total overhaul of the test environments and the way the test environments were managed. So, you know, this was a matter of just getting traction by calling people's attention to the pain. The pain was already there. It's just that nobody felt it, and nobody felt that there was a way around it. So, you know, by putting a dollar figure on this stuff, it really gets people's attention. Now, let's see. Question via email. Are you saying in this presentation that test automation is stupid? Or is it just that using a particular tool is stupid? No, I'm actually not saying either of those things, and I'm glad to clarify that. I think automation is smart when it's done properly, when it's driven by a smart strategy and it has measurable return on investment targets attached to it. I think that automation is very smart. Particularly fond of automation of unit testing included in a continuous integration, regression test type of harness. Wrote an article on that called Mission Made Possible that's also out on the website if you're curious about how that works. So automation is smart. What's dumb is either using the wrong tool because you're not rigorous in your tool selection process, and you get talked into basically buying a hammer to put screws in the wall, or trying to do automation without a strategy. Just assuming, we're going to spend $500,000 on tools and something good will happen. It won't. Let's see, another question via email. I've done some of these things, and I'm going to stop now, but I'm sure that there are other stupid things that we might be doing. How does an assessment work? What is the process? Well, generally speaking, and the way that RBCS assessment works and the way that I think most assessments work is there's a combination of prep work, looking at documents and other work products produced by the test team or other parts of the organization, and interviews of the various key participants and stakeholders in the test process, and then finally analysis of the data. And out of those three things should come some sort of measurement of how the test team is doing with respect to the chosen measurement framework. This would be critical testing processes or one of the other three that I mentioned, and plus some prioritized set of recommendations, and again, hopefully prioritized via pain metrics of some kind or another. This whole process typically, when we do it per site, takes about a week of on-site, and it's about a week of analysis and prep and so forth associated with it. So it's not terribly time-consuming or terribly expensive to have a consultant do it. It's not terribly time-consuming or difficult to do it yourself either. Let's see. A question from Kirby here. What if you find yourself in QA without having been involved in the process from the beginning? How do you rescue the situation? Well, the short answer, Kirby, is you can't. To assure quality, you would have to, from the beginning of the process, be involved in ensuring that the processes that were used minimize the risk of problems escaping from that step of the process to the next. To the extent that you can't do that, then you're not really assuring quality. You're getting into an assessment of quality mode at the end. And as I said, there is nothing wrong with that. But what's wrong is with the mismatch in expectations between what people want you to do, assure quality, make sure we don't have any bugs when we ship, versus what you actually can do, which is just assess the quality at the end. I have a question here from Satguru Anand. Hi there, the new ISTQB advanced courses cannot be taken online. Please arrange to take it online. So Satguru, I'm not sure what the issue is. I'm assuming you're talking about RBCS's ISTQB e-learning courses. Please send an email to info@rbcs-us.com and let us know what the problem is. If maybe you're having a problem with registering or having a problem with your account, but let us know and we'll get that fixed immediately. Because yes, all the ISTQB Foundation and advanced courses are up there and they're operable, so we can solve this problem. Shakira asks, is there a way to get a copy of the presentation? Shakira, I assume you joined late because I mentioned this at the beginning. It is at www.rbcs-us.com on the basic library page. So feel free, as I said, to download it. And if you like it, share the link to other people, please. Question from Jay Miller. When will your book, Beautiful Testing, be available? Well, just to clarify, it's not my book. It's a book, I contributed to this book. It's being published by O'Reilly. It's got a number of chapters from a number of various people involved in testing. I believe it will be out in early fall, as I understand it. I would go out to the O'Reilly website, which I'm afraid I don't know the URL off the top of my head, and take a look there and see if it's listed for coming. But it should be a good book. There's a lot of interesting contributors there. Any recommendations for books/papers on how to measure metrics and what to measure? That's from Albert. Good question. So obviously I've got some discussion about success criteria for testing in my book, critical testing processes, and in addition, in my other book, Advanced Software Testing Volume 2, the one about test management, it talks about metrics for success of a test team and what to measure. Now, in general, there are three types of things that you're going to want to look at as a test professional from a metrics point of view. There's the product metrics. Now, this is quality in use, as the phrase goes. This is looking at customer satisfaction and field failure rates and those kind of things of, what was the ultimate quality delivered from a customer's perspective. There are project metrics, which are basically looking at, how close are we to done in terms of release for this project? Bug find, fix curves, and test completion percentage and that kind of good stuff. And then there's also process metrics, and that's actually what I was focused on here, is adopting a set of metrics for your process, your test process. And things like defect detection effectiveness. What percentage of the defects do you find? Defect detection efficiency, which can be measured through your cost of quality. What is the cost of finding a defect in test compared to the cost of finding a defect in the field? In other words, how much money do you offer the organization the opportunity to save every time you find a bug? That basically what you want to do for your process metrics is define your goals, objectives of your organization, and then define for those the ways in which you would know whether you were meeting those goals or not, the key questions that you would need to be able to answer to know whether you were meeting those goals. And then from that, the metrics that would measure them would follow. And, ideally for, let's say you use the critical testing process framework, you'd have 12 processes. For each process, you'd have, say, 3 or 4 key process indicators that you would be looking at. That's the way to proceed on that. Let's see, question from Shane. One thing that test teams sometimes deal with is bad requirements documents from designers. You have garbage in, garbage out. What's the best way to prevent this? Should you just keep sending the docs back? And sometimes both sides get frustrated with. Yeah, that requirements ping pong is definitely not a fulfilling experience. I mean, we had that happen with one client once where we were going back and forth, back and forth. Finally, the client contact came to us and said, look, you got to stop pestering these guys with your marketing people with your questions about the requirements. And I said, well, we've done some analysis on this, and then we can proceed with the requirements the way they're written, but we expect that we're going to be about 20 to 25% less efficient if we have to proceed with this document. So that basically there's me pointing out the pain, right? That's basically saying either we're going to test 20% less, 25% less, or we're going to cost 20 to 25% more, right? Now, the client came back with an interesting response. He said, I would rather just pay you the extra money now than have to try to teach these guys how to write requirements. And I said, well, that being the case, and as long as your checks don't bounce, that's fine. I think you have to be realistic about how much change you're going to be able to affect here. I mean, quantify the problems that this bad requirements cause in terms of a reduced defect detection effectiveness, a reduced defect detection efficiency, increased turnaround time in terms of closure period on the bugs, because there's arguments about whether something is or is not a bug, the increased defect rejection rate, which is another form of inefficiency, and start to quantify some of the things that happen because of bad requirements. And if that doesn't motivate change, then you have to play the hand you're dealt. I mean, as testers, we have to do that. But make sure that when you're trying to motivate change, you're not communicating from a, it makes me sad when these things happen perspective, because that don't communicate about your pain, because as I've said many times, nobody cares about your pain, right? In an organization, people care about wider organizational pain. So anytime you're talking about how sad it makes you that something happens, there's a place to have that conversation, and that place is called a bar, and that's called venting, but the problem solving is a different thing. let's see. Albert asks, how can we communicate to senior management that quality is important from the beginning of the development process? Well, I think this gets into what does management value, right? If money is important, then one of the things that you can do is look at the differential cost of failure later in the project rather than earlier in the project and communicate based on that. If time to market is what's really important, then communicate about how it is that a large number of bugs found during system test is what actually determines how long system test takes to execute, right? I mean, do a simple comparison of what if we ran every one of our tests and they all passed and we didn't find any bugs? How long would it take us to release then versus what we currently experience? This again, this gets back to finding people's pain. What is going to motivate them to change is what makes them feel pain, and so I would say go after that. Figure out what is their motivation, what is their pain point, and use that to try to motivate. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not. You can do this the wrong way and come across as manipulative, and I'm certainly not. I'm not trying to suggest that. I'm suggesting an honest attempt to communicate with people about something that matters to everybody when I'm talking about pain. I'm not talking about manipulating people politically. Let's see, another question via email. I've read about test policy documents in your book on advanced software testing. Can I use a test policy document to define my mission, and if so, how does that work? Yes, you absolutely can. There's a discussion about that in Advanced Software Testing Volume 2 about how a test policy document works. It should be a short document that defines your objectives and key metrics for using those objectives. And I would say that's a good thing to do. Look at defining a process and or defining your mission and your objectives in that policy document. A question from Yusuf here. Good to hear from you again, Yusuf. What's your advice on managing stakeholder expectations? How do you convince non-technical people who strongly believe you should find all bugs that it can't be done? Ooh, well, one way is through this what I was talking about, external benchmarking. I mean, nobody finds all bugs. It just simply does not. It doesn't happen. There is no test team out there that does that. I think, maybe sometimes this problem is that when you say that as a test manager, when somebody says that from inside, it comes across perhaps as defensive or as self-justifying. You can point to books like mine that talk about this topic. You can point to books like those that Capers-Jones has written, where he quotes industry numbers about percentages of bugs that are found and fixed in different organizations, and it's just try to bring some other outside voices into the debate, because one of the things that sometimes happens is that these stakeholders have as I said before, really become sort of married to this opinion. They've got this opinion that, well, you should find all the bugs, and if you're not doing that, then you're not doing your job right. And if you go back and forth with them, it might not be the world's most productive discussion. So I'd say try to get some outside voices involved if you can by citing books and so forth, and to really try to avoid getting into a defensive mode on this, because I think that's counterproductive. Okay. Time for one last question here from Avinash. What if your leaders believe you are a QA organization but has only empowered you to be a software test organization tasked with measuring the quality of the product as opposed to improving quality? It's shocking how they don't see the difference in spite of it being so obvious. Besides your books, webinars, etc., are there other industry standard material that you would recommend that we can use as data? Yes, I think that gets back to what I was just saying to Yusuf. Pick up a copy of one of Capers-Jones's books on this, and look at some of the research that he's done on cost of defects found and defect removal effectiveness in various stages of the life cycle. And I think this should give you some ammunition for why to do things earlier rather than later. Okay, to close this session, let me tell you a bit more about the resources available through RBCS. We plan to run these free webinar sessions about once a month, so check our website, www.rbcs-us.com, to sign up. If you would like a special webinar presentation for your company only of this webinar or any other topic related to software testing, please contact us at info@rbcs-us.com or via our website. If you don't already receive our regular free newsletter, you can sign up at www.rbcs-us.com. By signing up, you will get valuable discounts on consulting and training services, along with a regular newsletter that includes a featured article on software testing and quality and news about what RBCS and its partners are doing lately. You can also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/RBCS. So this concludes the webinar. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, and hope to hear you again on future webinars.
Hi, I'm Rex Black, President of RBCS. Welcome to the RBCS YouTube channel. Hey, I hope you enjoy all these free resources that are available here. And do us one favor. We need to keep the lights on, and we need your help to do that. So, when you need testing and quality related services, training, consulting, expert services, you name it, let us be one of the bidders on that next job. We don't expect to get all of your business, but we'd like to get a chance. Thanks, and enjoy the shows.